Hello friends, welcome to the Wednesday edition of Virtual Happy Hour. This evening we are making the classic cocktail, the Dry Martini. This has an uncertain history in that some believe it dates back to 1860 when the Martinez was invented, presumably at the Occidental Hotel in San Francisco. But the Martinez is really a completely different drink. It is made with sweet vermouth, often with maraschino liqueur and even cherry brandy, so it has a much sweeter flavor profile than what we're about to be serving here today. I would describe this drink as being for professional drinkers only. It is a very dry, very spirited drink, requires an extremely cold, well-chilled martini glass, and lots of good stirring over ice in your mixing glass. So this drink, as it stands, is sometimes traced back to the Knickerbocker Hotel in New York City around 1911 or 1912. At the time, similar cocktail was on the list there called the Margherita Cocktail, which had 2-to-1 ratio of gin to dry vermouth. The more modern specs for this tend to have slightly different ratio, even more gin, and slightly less vermouth. It became really popular as a cocktail in the Prohibition era because while most spirits weren't widely available, people were mixing up the gin in their bathtubs, friends. And well, that could be very dangerous and could occasionally lead to blindness. It was pretty much the only thing people could get their hands on. So the martini rose to popularity in the Prohibition era, but martinis became exceedingly dry after Prohibition was lifted and they could get their hands on the dry vermouth and not just a straight glass of gin. So we're gonna go ahead and get started here. We're going to do 2.5 ounces. That's right, 2.5 ounces of gin. You could use Old Tom gin for this, or a classic London dry like Beefeater or Tanqueray. As you can see, I am using Aviation. And then we're gonna do 3/4 of an ounce of our dry vermouth. I like Dolan dry vermouth. Remember, keep it in your fridge. Whoa! Was more than I needed. Make sure to pour that all in there. A little aggressive with the pour. And then we're gonna add in just 1 dash of orange bitters. Hard to tell if anything's really coming out of that little tiny bitters bottle. And then we're gonna add a whole bunch of ice. And we're gonna give it a very solid stir. I have a friend that often orders martinis at restaurants, but she's a vegan and I often worry about her because these certainly pack a punch and they do sneak up on you, and when the only thing you can order on the menu is French fries or bread, I'm often concerned that the martini is going to go straight to her head. To her credit, she seems to hold it together pretty well. As I said, this is certainly not my go-to drink, but we are in quarantine. What better time to make a quarantini, dry martini in the quarantine. No better time than right now, I say. So this drink, as I said, rose to popularity post-Prohibition, but came out of favor in the 70s and 80s when it was considered to be old-fashioned and boring. That should be pretty good. And other drinks rose to popularity in that time, but it had a certain resurgence in the 90s when it became cool again. And that's when we saw the rise of a whole bunch of other things called martinis, like an apple-tini or an espresso martini, very few of which are actually made with gin. Most are made with the vodka, of course, which is totally different. If you did want a martini with the vodka, I would encourage you, I've taken the pith of a lemon, I've sliced it nice and thinly, and then I've wrapped it around that cocktail pick to give us this lovely lemon twist. And I'm just gonna drop in there. Cheers. Yeah, it's good. It's very boozy, very adult. So it's important that you manage your dilution by giving it a nice long stir like I did. But as I was saying, if you wanted a vodka martini, you should maybe think about the Vesper, which is a whopping 4.5 ounce cocktail if you make it to the original spec. It involves gin and dry vermouth and vodka. And the recipe for that is on my blog, where I've dialed back the ratio and the number of ingredients just a bit, so that, not the number, but the volume, I should say, of ingredients just a bit, so that it's not gonna kill you. But that is James Bond's martini, and it is shaken, not stirred. So you're gonna get more aeration and even more dilution. But here we go to the classic dry martini. Hopefully you learned something here today, and I will see you tomorrow. I have a exciting little announcement that I'll be sharing after I post this recipe, something to look forward to for tomorrow and Friday. Anyway, until then.